You have consumed the content, the books, the podcasts, the morning routines, the cold showers, and the 5 a.m. alarms, and the journal prompts that promised a different version of yourself by the end of 90 days. You watched the speakers. You felt the surge, that specific, chest-expanding, almost electric sensation of potential temporarily embodied. The feeling that this time the information would be enough to finally become what you have been trying to become for longer than you are comfortable admitting. And then, the feeling faded. Within hours in some cases, within days in most. And you returned, not dramatically, not in a single moment of visible failure, but in the quiet, ordinary, almost imperceptible way that the water always returns to its original level. The same patterns, the same hesitations, the same version of yourself that was there before the surge, now holding a highlighted book and a journal with 3 entries, and the specific fatigue of someone who has tried the available tools and found them insufficient. This is not a failure of motivation. This is the correct functioning of a biological system that was designed for something the motivation industry has never once addressed. Motivation is a chemical event, specifically a dopaminergic event. The lecture that inspired you, the book that opened something, the video that made you feel capable of a fundamentally different life, produced a measurable neurological response. Dopamine, norepinephrine, the neurochemistry of potential, flooding a nervous system that had been waiting for permission to feel capable. And then the neurochemistry normalized, because that is what neurochemistry does. The biological autopilot, the ancient, automated, continuously running survival management system that governs 95% of your daily behavior, does not respond to inspiration. It responds to identity. And your identity, the specific, body-level, neurologically encoded sense of self that the autopilot is organized around, did not change during the lecture, did not change during the podcast, did not change during the surge. So the surge passed. The identity remained. The autopilot resumed its management of a self it recognized, the same self it had been managing for the entirety of your life, and called it the return to normal. This is why you are still here, not because you lack discipline, not because the information was wrong, because the information was delivered to the conscious mind of a person's biological autopilot was calibrated to a different identity. And the autopilot, which does not negotiate with the conscious mind, simply waited for the surge to pass and then resumed its program. Hit the like button right now, because what I am about to show you is the only framework that addresses the autopilot directly, not the conscious mind, not the motivation, not the information, and it will change why every previous attempt felt like pushing against a wall that was never going to move. The tool that makes this possible is the Void Protocol, not another motivational framework, not a productivity system, not information delivered to the same conscious mind that has already received more information than it needed. A nervous system deceleration manual, the precise, documented, neurologically grounded method for bringing the biological autopilot to a speed at which the deeper work, the identity level work,
The work that the motivation industry has never been able to reach can actually begin. The link is in the pinned comment and in the description below. Access it before you continue, or continue and return to it. But understand this: the work described in the next 7 minutes cannot happen at autopilot speed. That is not a preference. That is the neurological condition under which identity level change becomes possible. Carl Jung diagnosed the failure of motivation 50 years before the motivation industry existed. He did not use those words. He used the word complex. The complex, an autonomous psychological structure formed around charged emotional experiences, is not a wound. It is not a belief. It is not a pattern of thinking that can be interrupted by better information. It is a program, running independently, running continuously, running at a level of the psyche that the conscious mind cannot directly access, generating the automatic responses, the default emotional reactions, the specific categories of behavior that motivational content identifies as the problem and then attempts to solve with more conscious level information, which is precisely why motivational content fails, not because the information is wrong, because the information is delivered to the wrong level of the psyche. The complex lives in the shadow, and the shadow, the totality of everything that was placed outside the permitted range of your conscious identity, is not accessible through motivation. It is accessible only through what Jung called shadow integration, the deliberate, unflinching, systematically courageous act of turning toward the autonomous structure, not to fight it, not to suppress it, not to motivate yourself past it, but to see it clearly, honestly, without defense. And the seeing, the genuine, present moment, clinically honest observation of the complex in operation is the act that begins to dissolve it. Not because observation destroys what it finds, because the complex requires unconsciousness to operate. It runs in the gap between stimulus and your awareness of it. It generates its pattern before the conscious self has the opportunity to intervene. And the moment you can observe it, name it, trace its origin, recognize it as an inherited structure rather than an immutable truth, the gap closes. The pattern loses its automaticity. The identity begins to update, and the autopilot, which was protecting the identity encoded before the update, begins slowly and measurably to protect the new one. But this is only the surface of the maze. What lies beneath the unmotivated self is far more disturbing and far more liberating than the failure of another 90-day program. Because the motivation industry failed you by design, not through malice, through the fundamental misunderstanding of what drives human behavior. A misunderstanding so pervasive, so profitable, so precisely aligned with what people want to hear, that questioning it feels almost dangerous. The misunderstanding is this: that the primary obstacle to the life you want is a deficit of motivation, that what you need is more inspiration, more information, more precisely formulated systems for managing the conscious behavior of a person whose unconscious identity has not been examined. The motivation industry profits from this misunderstanding because a person who has addressed their unconscious identity, who has done genuine shadow integration, who has brought the complex into consciousness, who has updated the autopilot's identity program, does not need motivation. They need direction. They do not wake up uncertain of their capacity. They wake up uncertain of their next step, which is an entirely different problem with an entirely different set of solutions. The person who still needs motivation after years of consuming motivational content is not a failure of motivation. They are a success story of an unconscious complex that has never been directly addressed. The law of reverse effort operates in this domain with surgical, almost cruel precision. The harder you push for motivation, the more motivational content you consume,